Wowing your customers, employees, patients, or anybody else you're designing for doesn't do much good if you don't deliver on the basics. When our attention is focused on going big, those we want to engage with can end up just going home because we miss everyday moments to make a great impression. This is precisely what the Unwow Your Blueprint for Experience Designs of All Kinds is meant to help you with, finding those regular opportunities to design small for big impacts. We might not always be able to wow our audiences, but we can always unwow them by focusing on the things that matter the most. Follow me on LinkedIn or subscribe at experiencexdesign.com to stay on top of all of the Unwow news and learn how to design better everyday experiences. That's follow me, Gary David, on LinkedIn or subscribe for updates at experiencexdesign.com. Now, on to the show.
1, 2, 3.
Hi, I'm Gary David. Welcome to Experience by Design, the podcast where we explore experience designs of all kinds. Hello, experience designers and EXDers everywhere. Happy 4th of July weekend and happy Canada Day for those who celebrate Canada Day. Growing up in Detroit, being Canada adjacent, we always celebrated Canada Day and the 4th of July at the same time with fireworks in the Detroit River. One of which times I ended up accompanying somebody into the emergency room at Detroit Receiving Hospital. But that is another story for another time. And speaking of stories, one of the most interesting parts of this book writing journey that I'm on right now is the storytelling part, is learning how to tell a good story. In academic writing, there tends to be more of a focus on, shall we say, a kind of sanitized relating to facts in a very impassioned way. Not passionate, but no passion. Unpassioned, something like that, without much passion involved. Also, there is this verbose tendency to describe things, which is ironic because I just used the term verbose. If words equaled money, academics would be the richest people in the world, given how many words we use when not that many words are required. But more words doesn't equal greater understanding and better storytelling. In fact, it can be quite the opposite. It's not how much we say, but how we say it. That's important. Learning how to communicate in stories shouldn't be that hard. I mean, after all, it's part of human experience. This is how people have shared information for a very long time now. So why is it so hard to write that way? Why is it so hard to relate a story? Why are we so often insecure in terms of telling stories and communicating with others in that format? It is true that being a good storyteller is an art, and it's also a science. There are elements that we can break down as part of storytelling, which need to be included no matter what story we're telling or no matter the environment in which it's being told. Today, there is more dazzling technology to assist in immersing people in storytelling. However, at its core, still remains, it is still about telling a story that captures the attention and imagination of the audience to bring others into the space that is being described. With that, I'm very pleased to have today on Experience by Design podcast, Charles Melcher, master storyteller, creator, and founder of Melcher Press, as well as The Future of Storytelling, an event that focuses on new developments at the intersection of storytelling and technology. There's also his book, The Future of Storytelling, which is a completely visually engaging and wonderfully creative exploration on emerging directions of telling stories and engaging audiences. That book was actually what drew me to want to talk to Charles in the first place. When I saw a copy of that book, I'm like, I got to talk to this guy. With all that experience, he clearly has a lot to say and share about storytelling. We talk about his early journey at Yale, where he studied literary criticism. He talks about his exploration of Robert Frank's photography, capturing experiences and telling stories through images. The examination of Frank would go on to exert a significant influence on how Charles works and thinks about images and stories. We discussed the balance between artistic expression and commercial appeal in publishing, sharing his experience in high-end art books as well as commercially viable projects. In some projects that actually combine both. Charles also talks about trying to balance technological wonder with intimacy, sharing examples of where he tried to combine intimate moments, but in a large scale production. Part of this is engaging the audience, and he prefers the term actians, which captures the active role of audiences in modern storytelling. Finally, if that wasn't enough, we talk about world building and immersive storytelling, creating the potential for surface entertainment and deeper narrative engagement, allowing people to customize their experience based on the level they choose to occupy, much like literary criticism. I mean, you can examine text at a lot of different levels, and you can examine immersive storytelling in the same way. He shares how this is part of his most recent project, the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library, which just so happens to open this July 4th weekend in Medora, North Dakota. As he describes, the library aims to help visitors embody Roosevelt's values and experiences. And he's a very consequential figure in American history and a very consequential president. So as we celebrate the 250th anniversary of the United States this weekend, it is a great time to explore telling complex stories that enrich, educate, entertain, and immerse. I was noticing that you were never quite able to leave your hometown. That you still remained home. Some people can't leave their hometown.
Yeah, no, I have actually just moved officially to Connecticut.
Oh,
so I do now live in Connecticut, but my company's office is still in the city, so I come in 2 days a week.
It raises the age-old question: is Connecticut part of New England or not?
where we are, I'd say definitely. We're in the northwest corner, so we're like 20 minutes to Massachusetts, 30 minutes to Guido's.
Okay.
So we count.
So you are in the Massachusetts part of Connecticut. You're in the Red Sox territory of Connecticut, although most people right now would not want to admit that.
That's true.
Given how the season has started out. And I was noticing, you have a film and literature background. I mean, why? You go to a place like Yale, which is very prestigious, and you're like, I want to study film and literature. So what was the motivation behind deciding to, number one, go to Yale? Not that one needs a motivation, but number two, focus on film and literature.
Yeah, I guess in high school, all my best friends basically were going to Yale. It just seemed like that was the hot place to go at that time. I think my senior class, there were 7 of us who went. And so I had other options. I didn't really think about any of the others seriously. When I got in there, I was like, that's it, I'm going.
As one would.
So, and then the decision to study film and literature, it actually started studying literature. Because again, the hot thing when I was there was the Yale School of Literary Criticism. And it had all of these deconstructionists and thoughtful scholars, and it was the cool thing. And so a lot of my friends, poets and authors, they were in those classes. So I took the classes. And then I realized, they're teaching us about ways to look at texts, to think about them in new ways, to think about them from in a critical distance. And I was also taking photography classes at the time and some film classes. And I just realized, hey, I could look at photos as a narrative, a sequence of images, a photography book, in the same way that one would look at a film or literature as a text. And so I decided to write my senior thesis on a book of photography, Robert Frank's The Americans, and to try to deconstruct that in an interesting way. So I ended up pretty much making my own major that brought together a whole range of different interests. And I guess in the end, I did that because it was such a wonderfully creative community,
right?
A place where there were artists and creative people were celebrated, and I found them to be the most interesting people there. And so that was all part of my trying to kind of be accepted in that community.
I'm not familiar with The Americans. I should be, because I'm looking at it right now. it seems, I'd be curious what drew you to that, but it also seems in some ways reminiscent of, I have a kind of a little fascination with Hopper and just the ways he portrays everyday life, tries to capture the essence of not something fantastical, but something mundane, just the lived experiences that people are going through on a routine basis, and then demonstrate that to a broader audience through his art.
Yes. So Robert Frank's The Americans is considered one of the seminal books of photography of the 20th century, and partially it's because of his unique look at America and his willingness to do it in a way that was grittier, more subjective. There are pictures in there where the frame is tilted, where
Gotcha.
the quality of the reproduction is grainy or dark or blurry. It was really very radical at the time. If you looked at it in comparison to Edward Weston and the F-64, the people out west doing, these really extraordinarily sharp and beautiful images of a landscape, or Ansel Adams kind of images. And here was this kind of gritty, I think he's Swiss originally, and he came to America and he drove around and he sort of looked at it as an outsider and yet captured something very uniquely American. And it's also sort of famous in the publishing world. Later, I spent time in the photography book world. I went to work at Aperture, a photo foundation, and realized like how seminal that book is, how collectible it is now. It's hard to get a copy. It's first published in French in France by Del Pier Publishing, and then later in the US the next year. And so, it was a book that I pored over, studied closely, thought about all the decisions that were being made by Robert Frank in the book. Bought a cheap copy of it back then,
Right?
and just really spent a lot of time in it. Very inspired by basically being able to have a unique vision as an artist, which is partially what Robert Frank became known for from that work.
In a sociological sense, it reminds me a little bit of Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America, where as a French guy comes over to the United States, tries to understand what makes this place unique, then comes out with this writing that tries to describe from his outside French perspective, aristocratic perspective, who these people are, what makes them who they are, and what makes this place special in some kind of ways, in a way that Americans themselves weren't necessarily able to do. And it just makes me wonder about the importance of being an outsider looking in to be able to capture elements that to the rest of us, we might not be able to because we're so used to looking at it in a certain way.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good analogy. I think you're absolutely right. And he did have the ability to see something special, I shouldn't say special, but something seen with fresh eyes, a country that wouldn't have seen itself that way.
And thinking about it from the literary deconstructionism, it's like whose text, whose context, from whose perspective are we looking at this from, and how do these things become authenticated as legitimate portrayals or illegitimate portrayals, especially at the time when Frank was doing his work, at that moment of American transition. But I'm also kind of curious how that influences even today your work in terms of literally authoring text, but also thinking about voice and representation and perspective regarding those things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he certainly was showing up at a moment of transition in America, right? The late 50s, moving into the 60s, and he was definitely making a comment or criticism on the country. I mean, for me, again, photography was this great place to learn about sort of how to see the world visually, how to tell stories through selection or sequences of images. Also just understanding that there could be forms of expression that were unique to a medium.
Right.
One of the things that Robert Frank gets credit for was operating with a small camera, right? So he wasn't trying to create these big painterly images. He was trying to create a kind of imagery that had an immediacy, an intimacy, something that could happen quickly. Like he was really discovering a new language, and it was a dance with the technology.
Right.
So I that has always influenced me. I've always thought about that, how new forms have to take a little bit of time to figure out their voice, how to do things in ways that are different from old forms, and how to really sort of make them unique to themselves. And I think Robert Frank was one of these photographers who helped to figure out what photography could be, like find a new way to squeeze some new, notes,
right,
out of this instrument, like some amazing jazz player who was able to find, some different sounds out of a saxophone or a trumpet, or I think that's what Robert Frank was doing.
It reminds me a little bit of, in a weird way, one of my best jobs ever was I worked in a 1-hour photo lab in high school. So remember back in the days when you can get your film developed in an hour.
Woo, fast.
I know. And how exciting was that? And it was, we even were so fancy. We had 3-hour slides. We could process slides and mount them in 3 hours. I mean, we're talking big deal.
Yeah. Fast.
But it gave you, and I wish I had an anthropological sense back then, or even a sociological one, because it gave you an interesting view into people's lives, because you were charged with, producing what it is they were trying to capture in a form that they could look at and share.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just kind of think back to those moments of the mundane elements, and sometimes the provocative elements, and sometimes the attempted artistic elements, and sometimes the illegal elements, like the time when we printed off fake driver's licenses. I don't think that statutes of limitations has run out. At least I hope it has. But the idea of the photograph as a way of capturing, and even today, because we can do that on our phone, have we lost some of that fastball of the uniqueness because it is so mundane? You know what I mean? I don't know if you thought about it, but it just comes to mind now that it took money and time to produce pictures back then. Now it takes neither, really.
Yeah.
And how does it change our relationship with it?
Go even further back. Imagine when you had to lug a big heavy box and lots of glass plates,
right?
And, dangerous chemicals, and you're having to take this out west in order to, make a picture of a beautiful landscape or a canyon or something. I mean, and the amount of time that went into framing, that image under a cloth. Like you might spend a half an hour, just getting it set up or more to take a single image, and then you had to lug it back to process it or develop it and print it and all that. So I just think about the amount of attention that went into the decision making.
Right.
Nothing was off the hip. Nothing was. You weren't holding it down and shooting off 60 frames in a second, in a minute or whatever, one a second. Like, you had to be very thoughtful and decisive about what you were going to commit to make. So different than what happens now.
And I think, I wonder about how it changes our relationship with the object as well, because if I'm taking a lot of pictures, I will probably not look at any of them, honestly, on my phone. I mean, once in a while I might go back, or once in a while my phone will tell me, here, remember this? I'm like, no, not at all. But I don't really portray them. I don't display them. I don't share them. Right. I don't put them on my wall.
Right.
They're just these artifacts of a moment in which I thought it was an idea to use my phone as a camera.
Yeah.
And does it cheapen the experience in terms of how I'm producing it, or does it not matter? Because it's still a moment in time that's worth capturing.
I think there's a lot of value in the time you invest in something.
Right.
When you think about the way you used to do it. I mean, I remember developing my own photos in college, and the hours in the darkroom, and the time spent with making those prints and making many, many prints to get just right. And by the time you were done, you really had invested a tremendous amount of your own decision making, your own eye, your own sense of taste and artistic expression in that. So I think you valued it because it was much more a piece of you. I don't know how much a piece of you people are getting when they're, scanning video of something walking down the street, or they're certainly not making the same commitment to the image or the sequence of images that they used to.
I want to get back to that, but I'm kind of curious. In looking at your timeline, what was the plan with film and literature, and especially given how quickly you started your company after graduating?
Yeah, there was no plan.
Right. Good.
My dad was like, "You're studying what?
You're going to where to study what?
What are you going to do with that?" Because I did this photography magazine, so I had taken photo classes, thought I could make a decent picture, realized there was no place to publish your pictures. So then I decided to start a photography magazine. Ironically, I never ended up publishing one of my own because it somehow didn't feel appropriate. But I had such a good time in the process of making that magazine, of having to put out calls for student work and then edit that work, having to collaborate with a graphic designer who was a graduate student in the design department, and getting to lay out the magazine, selling ads to raise money, commissioning essays and editing those, even going on press and working out a deal with a printer. Like I got an education in a small business as a student, and the school didn't give me any money, but I learned a lot. I got a lot of value from that experience, and so enjoyed it that when I graduated, I thought, you know what? Maybe I should go into publishing. Anybody can make money in a money business. Maybe I should try making a career and supporting myself in a creative field. And wouldn't that be amazing? And so I went around looking for jobs in publishing, and a friend of a friend got me an interview at Random House. And the starting salary was, I think, less than $14,000.
Right.
And I had made $15,000 for our magazine doing a calendar for the Alumni Association. And I thought, gee, if I could sell just one calendar, I'd make more than a year's worth of salary over there. Screw it. I'm going to start my own business.
Okay.
And I incorporated out of college.
And where do you think that drive came from? Was it something that was present in your family, or just something that emerged, or something that was always there in you?
My dad ran his own business.
Okay.
He was entrepreneurial. I think it was in the Melcher family line. My grandfather had been an entrepreneur, my uncle. So I think the idea of going out on your own didn't feel odd or terribly scary. I figured I'll give it a try for a year or two. What's the worst that can happen? I started from living at home, and I just started cold calling schools up and down the Northeast and tried to pitch them calendars.
Yeah, I have friends who are in sales, and it just seems like the most, I won't say horrifying, but very daunting of just doing. Maybe it's because it's my fear of rejection, but it's just the idea of, you call 10 people, you might get 0, you might get 1. And that's what success has to be.
Yeah, no, it's true. That was daunting. But it was for myself, and I figured if I can get some, this will be really exciting. And so I put together a little kit with samples and cover letter, and I got the list of all the colleges and universities in the US, and I just started calling, and I landed one. I started to work with Wesleyan. I got to do the Yale one again, and then not too long thereafter, I got some work from Dartmouth. And all of a sudden, I don't know, I think I made $40,000 that first year.
Not bad compared to Random House.
Yeah, it was a huge amount of money for me. So, I had expenses against that.
Of course.
That was gross.
Right.
But the net was still higher than Random House. And I had a huge amount of fun, and I got to do it myself, and I was in business. And then I got a call from Michael Hoffman, who was the director at Aperture, the photography foundation. They published a quarterly magazine and books, had exhibits. And because of my love of photography, he talked me into going there. And I learned, I spent a year at Aperture as an editor and also helping to sell international sales. So I sort of wore a left brain, right brain, two hats, and had a great time, learned a lot about the book business, which I didn't know about. And then I went from there to working with a guy named Nick Calloway, who had a book packaging company. And we had a great time together. I was there for just about 3 years, and we did Madonna's Sex when we were there together.
Oh, yeah. Right.
It was a big book. And so I went from doing like art books to doing actually was maybe the biggest book in the world that year. And that was pretty exciting.
Yeah, different than a Dartmouth calendar, for sure. Madonna's Sex, I do remember that came out. I know I have a lot of friends who are artists, and some of whom are trying to sell their artwork. And I always see this tension between artistic vision versus public appetite, right? And how do we think about pushing the boundaries of art and how we want to express oneself through whatever medium they're using, the film, photograph, word, versus what people are looking for or what people are willing to pay for. And I don't know, I guess it's just more of a comment. I'd be curious your thoughts of, in your own experience in the work that you do, figuring that out, that balance between, this is pushing the boundaries. It might not sell a lot, but it's an important statement to make versus this is like fast food, pop culture fast food. Yeah. It's not saying really much, but people will really like it.
Yeah. No, it's a tension that I think a lot about in my career has been balanced around. So it's an insightful question. When I was at Aperture, I used to watch Michael Hoffman confuse the two. There were some projects that would come to Aperture that were what we would call big books. They would have the opportunity to reach a large audience because the photographer was famous, because there was a big museum show where literally they could sell tens of thousands of copies and it would be profitable.
Right.
And I watched, and then there were other projects that would come that were from really talented artists whose work was well respected and important, for whom there was a very small audience.
Right.
And I would see him mess it up all the time. Like he should have supported the artist ones with giving money and double down on making the commercial ones more commercial. And he would somehow try to squeeze the money out of the little one and not give it to the big one. Like he got it all confused. And I remember thinking like, there is a clear difference here. And so when I then went to Calloway, it was clear that there were some things that were artistic, because Calloway was kind of an art publisher when I joined him, packager. And then there were other things that were pop culture. And again, in the book business, the ones that were the art things, there was a lot of trouble. There was no market for it. Like basically they had to be subsidized. Right. You had to go find a grant or a donor or a sponsor to do it. And then there were others that were commercially viable. And I just remember thinking, okay, what if we could take the quality, the editorial integrity, the manufacturing excellence, the beautiful design, all the lessons of high-end art book publishing, and apply it to much more commercial projects? Wouldn't that make something where the commercial projects might even transcend a little bit their pop culture-ness?
Right.
And wouldn't we be raising the bar, if you will, on what was being done in maybe the more pop and commercial space? And that's what we set out to do. And by the way, like the Madonna Sex book's a great example. Very popular. Madonna was the number one performing artist in the world at that time. We knew the book was going to be successful. What did we make? We made an artist book.
Right.
That we sold 3 million copies of instead of 300 copies or 3,000. Right. Like it literally was using Mohawk superfine paper, which was the high-end, beautiful uncoated sheet from the Mohawk mill that would have been used at Aperture. We got Richard Benson, who was a MacArthur genius printing expert who worked on all the high-end photo books to help us do the film and oversee the printing. We made custom metal covers that were each one individually numbered. It was a limited edition.
Right.
of 3 million like, maybe the largest limited edition ever, numbered edition ever. We brought all of those standards of and tools of high-end art bookmaking to Stephen Meisel's photographs of Madonna living out different sexual fantasies with different partners.
Right.
We had Fabian Barone come and add a beautiful design component to it to make it even a little edgier. And then we made it an interactive experience by putting it in a sealed Mylar bag that was hard to open, and you had to violate it. That was actually Madonna's idea. You had to like violate this bag like with a knife or somehow tear it open like a condom package, to get in, to find the hard covers and the soft inside paper to be able to have this, intimate experience of hard and soft and interactive inside the book, inside the package.
Right.
Anyway, it was, no other publisher would have done that because we spent so much money and time to make those, very unique things. I mean, Mohawk Superfine is very expensive paper. Like, there are a lot cheaper sheets that
right.
saved a lot of money and put a lot, we made decisions that were in support of that as an artist statement, Madonna's artist statement, that a commercial publisher generally wouldn't have done. And let me just say, I wouldn't use metal again as a binding material or as a cover material because it had all sorts of problems, but it was part of it. Anyway, I talked too much about this, but I have done that a lot in my career, which is to go for commercial subjects and give them a very thoughtful treatment, both in terms of the content, the design, and the object, the manufacturing, borrowing from my background in artist books or art publishing.
One of the themes that I think keeps coming up here, at least for me, is the connection between the preciousness of the resource or the limitedness of the resource leading to greater intentionality around decision-making to produce something that hopefully is of note to a broader audience, but at least is meaningfully felt by the person producing it. And so whether it be the early photographs or even Madonna's book, or even the work you talk about now in the future of storytelling, those kinds of immersive experiences aren't easy to pull off.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm going out and writing a blog that I can just, throw out words because it doesn't cost me anything to post it online.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think it's very thoughtful note, Gary, because, Madonna was trying to create a sense of almost like you discovered her personal diary,
right.
Like you were getting to read her intimate confessions that she might not share with anyone. She was looking for something that felt that kind of, I don't know how else to say it, but like intimacy, right? That as if she were whispering in your ear, her inner fantasies. But we were doing it on a mass scale for the entire world.
Right.
I mean, literally the entire world is the #1 best-selling book everywhere. It was published. So here was somebody who was willing to share this kind of one-on-one private secrets with everybody all at once.
Right.
And I think that I am struggling with that exact same issue today with immersive storytelling, where the best immersive storytelling experiences are a one-on-one with an actor.
Right.
Where you have this, literally I had an experience in a Punch Drunk show, The Drowned Man, where I was in a room alone with an actress and she's in my arms and I have to make this decision.
Right.
I'm alone in this room with this beautiful woman in my arms and she's looking up longingly into my eyes and I'm having to decide, what am I going to do? Am I going to kiss her or not? And it was incredibly intimate scene and so powerful because of it. I never have forgotten it. I've told the story many, many times.
And it's in your book, and I enjoyed that story. I'm like, what's going to happen next?
It's in my story. I told it on the stage at FOSS. Like I've shared that story. And that level of intimacy and personalization and like giving the agency to me, was I going to kiss her or not, was only possible because it was a live actress one-on-one with me.
Right.
and the problem with immersive experiences is that we've struggled to scale that. Because those things are powerful. Those elements of intimacy and personalization and responsiveness and multisensorial, in that case, excitement, embodied excitement. Like, how do you do that at scale?
Right.
And you're the first person who's made me realize I did that with Nick Calloway and with Madonna and Fabian. We did that at the beginning of my career.
Right.
we had it like a one-on-one with Madonna, but we sold millions of copies in multiple languages everywhere in the world. So it's possible to do. And we've been trying to find the ways to do that now with things like ABBA Voyage, where you can go and see this show and stand there and dance like a dancing fool with ABBA at their glory, but they're not even there. They're not holograms. They're digital doubles of the band, but they're so lifelike that I feel like I'm there with them. And because everybody else is buying it, we're all up and dancing. And so it's a real experience. I feel a little bit the same thing when I go to the Sphere, and I just went recently and I was in the Twister or the Wizard of Oz, and that wind is whipping by and it's cold and there's stuff in the air and the noise. And I truly feel like I'm in that Twister, and I maybe I have to be fearful for my life because maybe something's going to blow by and take me with it. Or, we're hungry for that kind of story where we have a role, where we feel more alive because we're in it, and we have full body sensorial experience. We have a sense of this happening for me. We have this sense of being able to influence or have some agency in the story. And I'm there with 2,000 other people in that theater watching it all at once. Those are stories, intimate stories that are happening to me, living stories, and at scale. And I think that's the challenge. Can we have that experience and still not have to have it be an artist project that only an artist can do for one person at a time or for a few people at a time, at a very narrow audience or exposure.
It's one of the reasons why in your book I was reading and I appreciated the mention of Red Dead Redemption 2, because it's one of my favorite video games for a lot of reasons. And it's at scale, but it's an individual one because I'm playing it by myself. It's not a multiplayer game, but I became so connected. And it was also very interesting. One of the elements of it was your decisions in the game influence whether you are a black hat or a white hat. There's a morality scale built in. So it's this idea of your decisions are a reflection of who you are as a character versus you just have to make decisions to push a story along.
Right. It's reflecting how you're deciding to play.
Right.
And that kind of responsiveness, again, that was never possible until video games.
Right.
Think about it. Every album you ever, every music you ever listened to, you just listened. Every book you ever read, you just read. Every television film show you watch, you just passively watch. You could yell at the television. It didn't matter. Whatever.
Right.
You're not changing the outcome. And until basically video games opened up the possibility of interaction, of responsive, of you having a influence on what was happening. And I think that has fundamentally changed the nature of what we consider to be audience.
Yes.
Audience was defined by having this passive role, and games taught us that we could have agency.
And this goes to your term actience that you've been talking about in the book.
Yeah. I feel the word audience it has its roots in listening, audio, from our history as being an oral culture, and it's outdated. It doesn't apply to the kind of active participation that immersive experiences or gaming are providing and demanding. And so I've struggled with getting a better name. A lot of us have. We need new terminology for things. And I remember Janet Murray in her classic book, Hamlet on the Holodeck, early book about interactive gaming, she suggested the term interactor.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Which I thought was clever, but it doesn't, to me, that's not as catchy. I've also loved the word player because it connotes Shakespearean acting as well as gaming. But it also has like a kind of little negative connotation to be a player.
Right. Don't hate the player, hate the game.
Exactly. don't hate the player, hate the game. Right.
Right.
But for me, I wanted a word that had the sort of root definition, right? Actians is based on that same root of the word actor or action, where you are having an active role. And that is what we demand now, or that's the opportunity now for this next generation of people who participate in their stories, people who are players or interactors. And I just think it's a perfect description for what this type of audience, for years I was using the people formerly known as the audience because I just thought so clever. But now I think it should be actians. And some people have said to me, well, that sounds like a funny sounding word. I was like, listen to audience. That's just as weird a word. You're just more familiar with it.
Yeah, English doesn't have any funny sounding words in it. That's completely unheard of. As I was going through the book, it reminded me, I started thinking in a weird way, this is the way my brain works, about the Boston Red Sox and Fenway Park for the following reason. There's a complaint that the ownership of the Red Sox don't really pay attention to the product on the field because they have the product of the stadium. I mean, the stadium is the attraction, not the team for many people. And so we can build this experience in and around the stadium that draws people in. But at the same time, you do need a team that's good, hopefully, because that's what business is supposed to be about. So I think about that in relation to, we think about immersive storytelling and all of these great examples you show in your book. Does story still matter? Or is it more about all the stuff going around the story that becomes the attraction and not the story itself?
Look, world building is a key part of experiential stories, of immersive stories, as I like to refer to them as living stories. One of the differences is that if you have agency, if you have a role to play in this story, then there isn't necessarily one linear narrative path for this story.
Okay.
Instead, if you build a very rich world, and I talk a lot about world building, then you're designing a world that is filled with possibilities. You're setting the rules of the world that allow for a player, a participant, to unearth, to discover, to co-create a meaningful experience in that world for themselves. And so I am a big believer that there are powerful story experiences to be had that are nonlinear or don't start with a preconception of that linearity, because the world is so rich that they allow each person to have some sort of unfolding adventure in that story. Now, you need more than that. It's not just that. Like it helps to have some other characters. It helps to have the possibility of some sort of conflict, or some other things that are part of traditional pieces of traditional storytelling. And by the way, it's also really important to have some opportunity to decompress and to process that experience afterwards, because I find that often it's in the retelling. It's in the making sense of the experience that the actians had that the story actually is understood and codified and stays with the person.
One thing I really appreciate about that is last summer I went to Las Vegas. I went to Meow Wolf Omega Mart, and I don't know if you've ever been, but it's it's fantastic. But I kept wondering, okay, well, what's the story? I had to work so hard. Right. Because it is so open world, so to speak, using game metaphor. It is so open world that you can go do anything at any part and kind of find your path in any way, that I was struggling with. Like if you asked me what's it about, I couldn't tell you. I would have to go back many, many times, which might be the intent, but I was only there for one weekend.
Right.
And so I think about, Mega Mart in relation to what you just said, is how how much do we need to create some kind of path that people can tap into so they can talk about it and understand it versus just leaving it like open world and make of it what you will.
And so let me ask you, so did you enjoy it?
Yeah, no, I found it it was enjoyable. It was interesting. I'll talk about it and I would recommend it, but I couldn't know if I could describe it in terms of what the underlying motif was that was supposed to be present.
And let me just ask you, what was your journey? Like, quick, short version.
Yeah, we just, you walk into the store and then I saw someone go through one of the coolers. I'm like, oh, let's go this way. Because the person I was with had no idea what Meow Wolf was. And I had some understanding of it. Yeah. And so then we just started walking around.
Right.
And just bumping into stuff as we would go.
Yeah. 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 So I think a lot of people experience that level of it. Where they just understood that there was some kind of familiar world that they started in, although even in there, things are warped.
Right.
And there are some videos and things. There are ways to start to get some of the story. And then you go through one of the portals and you're in this, psychedelic world.
Right.
With some beautiful rooms and incredible, creative design or artistry in those rooms. And there are layers to that story. You can really peel that onion back and go deep or not, or just enjoy it on its surface. So, look, I think that it's a world that's designed for repeat visitation. Mm-hmm. I think it's a world that's designed for the skimmers, the swimmers, and the divers. So that some people want to just look and be in awe of the creativity. And the kind of audacity of playing with conceits about architecture and design and art and all that, and other people who are going to spend 50 hours there and are going to unearth every piece of message, code, video, and get to the very deep story that they've built in there around this company and this chemical that's running through the ground, and I forget the names of all of it. I sort of went to the middle. I wasn't a skimmer. I wasn't a diver. I was sort of in the middle on that one. But I'm a huge fan. I think they do incredible work. I think that people go in there and it changes their sense of what an experience can be. Like they didn't realize that you could warp and play with reality as deeply as these people do, as Meow Wolf team does. So is it a traditional for the person who visits once and spends an hour and doesn't really get into the story that they wrote? Is it as deep a story? No. Is it still a powerful experience? I think for most people, they still leave feeling like, wow, that was really cool. And some people come back and say, I want to unearth every bit of narrative, and character and backstory I can possibly find.
Reminds me a little bit of your description of your Yale literature classes, of reading things as text at different levels and how one chooses to approach it from what positionality or perspective informs not just the text, but what the text means as you interpret it and take it apart and think about it.
And boy, is that a world where it rewards deeper time.
Right.
And there are a lot of layers to that onion that you can peel back and go down. And I think the more you do, the more you get out of it. But it certainly pays off for the person who just wants to tour around for an hour and still have a fun time and buy themselves something in the gift shop.
I did do that too. And even off the shelves, because the shelves itself are the gift shop.
Yeah.
I'm like, can I buy this? Oh, you can buy this? That's, so that was a very interesting element too. In looking at your book, one of the things, and as we talk about this, it's not as if every experience needs to be Meow Wolf, but Meow Wolf shows what an experience can be, what this can be. And the examples you look at in your book on immersive storytelling and the different, and the 6 different elements that you talk about, I don't think you're saying, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that this is what storytelling needs to be in all instances, but this is the potential that storytelling has to be.
Yes, I think that's true. And also, I want to say that a lot of this is very early days.
Right.
A lot of the experiential work that I love is still, I think of it like silent black and white era of
Exactly.
film. Like they're just figuring it out. They're just barely getting something entertaining on the screen. and there's so much farther to go. We haven't opened up the door and stepped out into the Wizard of Oz, into Munchkin Land yet. You know, we're so early. And so I'm more forgiving in a way. I think you're comparing things at very different levels of their maturity as media. Film's been around for a really long time. We've got this great language of cinema. We have these people who've grown on, taken the work of other great artists before them and are stepped up on the shoulders of heroes and giants and are making beautiful, mature works of cinematic art. There isn't that length of history for a lot of the work that we're talking about. Punch Drunk was one of the first to really be doing immersive theater. Escape rooms are 20 years old. 20 years old.
I know.
My son's a lot older than escape rooms. Like, well, if escape rooms were a person, they couldn't buy a drink yet.
But they could join the military.
But they could shoot and fire anything. Yeah. So I try to remind people that a lot of this is in its very early days. And that's one of the things that I've always been about, is trying to get a larger community to share and cross-pollinate and collaborate. Because at this stage, the solutions and the breakthroughs and the keys are coming from all different places. And no one's going to solve it by themselves. So it's really important to have a community of creators and innovators who can work together, whether that's work together or a little, friendly competition or whatever it is that motivates people to go beyond and to innovate. I just interviewed for my podcast last night, Jay Rinsky, who runs a company called Little Cinema. And Little Cinema has just made these wonderful versions of classic films for Cosm. And Cosm, if you don't know, is that spherical, I think it's like a 85-foot sphere that is, there's like 4 or 5 of them now around the country, and they are dining experiences. You can go sit in there, have food and drink with your friends and family, and watch things on these giant spheres, like little mini spheres, Cosm. And so Little Cinema has recently released Matrix and The Wizard of Oz, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory in this spherical versions. And he's doing all these other wonderful things. And Jay was just saying how he had been at FOST like 9 years ago or something, early in his career, 8 years ago. His company had just started, and the network of people he met at the summit was so powerful. It's led to all of these incredible projects that he's done. And his work has evolved in such beautiful and cool ways, from what he did when he created a version of The Wizard of Oz for the final evening at the Future Storytelling in 2017 or whenever it was. Anyway, the point is, these are early days, and there's a lot of value in the community that we've tried to be part of and help foster.
And so with FOST, so it's an event that takes place regularly.
There was. We had to stop it because of the summit. I'm sorry, because of COVID. And now instead of that, we do our own podcast, Future of Storytelling.
Okay.
And we have what we call the FOST Explorers Club, which is a sort of membership community. And we do a bunch of stuff virtually online. We do some live events, and we do some trips where we go to places around the world and get to meet the most interesting creators and experience their immersive storytelling firsthand.
That sounds a lot better than playing a conference every year.
It's a lot more fun and a lot less bad for your health, the way that the conference was killing us.
Oh my, I can't even imagine. I put on a few conferences, nothing nearly that at scale, and I wanted to quit everything and just go to a yurt someplace.
Yeah. It was killing us, but it was great fun, and we loved it, and we were honored to do it, and we got to meet amazing people, and we got to the job was to curate the future, and that's a hell of a job.
Right.
The only problem was the 20 other jobs were having to, be an event producer, having to run sponsorship, having to create films, do transportation, food. There were a lot of other jobs there as well. So, but the curation one was really fun.
As a kind of a final question, I know you have coming up the Presidential Library Museum of Theodore Roosevelt, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you approach that, given that there's expectation of what a presidential library might be or who a person might be, but yet you're bringing this unique kind of immersive storytelling orientation, artistic inspiration orientation to a historical figure and what might be thought of as a traditional product? How do those things intersect?
Well, to be honest, the CEO and the board had this vision that it would be not your grandfather's presidential library, but rather it would be a more immersive experience for a contemporary audience.
That's great. That helps.
That helps. And I think that's part of the reason that they hired us as one of the first partners. Literally the first team they brought on was Future of Storytelling. And so from the get-go, we had this idea that this would be rather than a place for a president to store his papers and collection of things, which is what a presidential library traditionally has been, and also a place where the president gets to kind of write the first chapter of how history will think about him. In this case, Theodore Roosevelt had been dead 100 years.
Right. All
his papers had been put someplace else. So we were freed from that. And rather, we thought of it as the people's library. We thought of this as a place where you would come and experience things in a way that would help you to live and embody Theodore Roosevelt's experiences and values, and then hopefully take that with you out into the world. We literally thought of it as a museum that would bring you in to send you out to be a better citizen or a better leader or better conservationist.
And I think with a complicated character like Theodore Roosevelt, again, going back to your work in deconstructionism and your literary program, I mean, there's a lot of ways of looking at him, right? And so how do you can't necessarily, you don't want to project a two-dimensional image as if it's been decided upon, when his legacy, as great as it is, still continues to be looked at, examined, and understood.
Yeah. Well, what's so interesting about him as a figure is that people see in him what they want to see.
Exactly.
And he's one of the few figures that is equally beloved by the right and the left.
Right.
Which is so rare in our world today. And yet both can point to many things that they take great inspiration from. And so realizing that, we wanted to be careful not to bias people's perception one way or another, but really just to kind of put it out there, put the facts out there, put his history out there, and let people come and make their own judgments. If you spend the time, you'll find things that you think are amazing. You'll find things that you were surprised and disappointed about. And he's all of the above. And hopefully you'll leave realizing that it's okay to be an original. Like you can hold true to a set of beliefs and not have to align. He was somebody who truly believed in principle over party. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's the most successful third-party candidate, I think, in American history, because he eventually left the Republican Party and ran the Bull Moose. So anyway, he's a great figure to work with. He did so much in 60 years of his life. We barely could, you can barely touch on it all. I mean, honestly, we have 35,000 square feet of exhibits, and I can't believe how little we could say.
Right.
Put in there.
It's such a fun project. I can't even imagine. And I mean, I'm just kind of curious how much meow wolf are you bringing into the presidential librry? Are there going to be track doors or anything like that?
Let's just say there's a fireplace you crawl through.
Enough said. Enough said. Well, God, there's a million things I could ask you, but I don't want to take too much of your time. Charles, thank you so much for taking the time to chat about the future of storytelling, the book, your work, Melcher Media, and your journey to where you are right now and the work you're doing.
Gary, thank you for the really thoughtful questions. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
I want to thank Charles Melcher for joining me to talk about storytelling, immersive experiences, technology, and audiences as Actians, and also whether or not Connecticut is part of New England. You can find out more about his work and his book in the links in the show notes. And as always, you can share feedback about this episode or any episode at feedback@experiencexdesign.com. And if you want to subscribe and join the EXD community, especially to stay involved in all of the unwow news so you can be properly unwowed, head over to our website, provide your email, and stay on top of all of that information, which will be coming shortly. And it's going to be very unexciting because we're going to be unwowing you. And while you're there, if you want to, you can also buy me a coffee to help support the cost of the podcast. Anything is appreciated, and my sincerest gratitude to those who have. There's not many of you, but you're a small and mighty group. And as you get ready to plan your corporate event or other event for the upcoming year, and you need a speaker with humor, insight, charisma, and charm, who is easy to work with, make sure you consider me, Gary David. You know me from the podcast, but now you can have me in person or virtual, whichever way you want. I'm easy to work with. Did I mention that? So if it's a professional development, a training, moderating, whatever it is, let me know. And I can see if I can help you because I think I can. You can check out my speaking profile at garyconnects.com and see the range of topics that I have spoken about, including creating workplace communities, employee-centric cultures, achieving belonging and connection, and how to unwow your audiences. So shoot me a message at gary@garyconnects.com or DM me through LinkedIn. And with that, happy 4th of July, happy Canada Day, and be safe, especially with those fireworks. Leave it to the professionals. Be kind and be well, and be here for the next Experience by Design. Bye.